my other recording streaming private YouTube before we start talking. I think we're on now. My other recording streaming. Okay, excellent. All right, so welcome to the second week again of the trauma course. I am excited to see all of you. If you are not talking, please mute yourself so that you don't interrupt the flow of the lecture. And I know that some of you are in groups, so that works too. Today, we're going to talk about trauma in terms of what it is and what it isn't. Hey, Pastor Abby, look, I see you. Welcome. You're retaking the advanced portion of it. Abby was one of our first the group of students who took this class, but the class has developed over time, so they're coming back to take the edited, updated version. So that's good. So in this class, in the first part of the class, I'm going to explain to you what your group project is. And I'm also going to give you an opportunity to get another certificate within the class from another university. But that is totally optional for you. So I'm gonna pull up this. I'm gonna pull up my PowerPoint so I can actually explain what I'm talking about, if this makes sense. But how was your week? Did any of you review? Don't raise your hand. Did you review what your readings? I'm hoping you did your readings before you're coming to class today, because I do not teach to the text. You need to read those books so that you can get a better understanding and a mastery of the concepts that we're talking about in class, if that makes sense. So let us then take a look at my PowerPoint. Let's see my PowerPoint. Where are you? Oh, before I do that, there's one thing I need to do. Give me a minute. All right, so now let's do it. Let's record. Let's share the PowerPoint. This will help guide my conversation in the class. Okay, so here is the first one I want to talk to you about. In this particular, in your syllabus, if you take a look at your syllabus, it should be there, but let me explain what it is. So, look, I'm trying to fix my screen a little bit better so it's not all crowded. All right, so let's move this here. All right, so it's the Trauma Focus CBT. This is a freebie. It's not free, by the way. It's $35, and it's it's not housed in jars, and I'll show you where it's housed in a minute. It's called Trauma Focus CBT training. It's $35. You can pay them yourself, or you can pay us, and we'll help you transfer the money in dollars. But it's an online cost of $35. But when you finish, you get a certificate for Trauma Focus CBT for children. If you plan on working with children between the ages of 3 to 18, I strongly suggest that you take this very intensive, very masterfully crafted class, and I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. So let's take a look. Oh, why is it not? Hold on. I have to stop sharing first. Hold on. Stop sharing. And we're going to go to where the course is housed. Okay, so let me share this screen again. And this time, I think this is where we need to go. All right, so here it is. This is where the course is housed. This is what it looks like. It's housed in the Medical University of South Carolina. And these are all the units you're going to take in the course. It's the foundation of trauma-focused CBT. It is psychoeducation, parenting skills, relaxation, affect identification and regulation, cognitive coping, trauma narration and processing 1. This is when you actually work with the traumas. Trauma narration and processing 2. So the 2 of it, in vivo mastery, conjoint parent-child sessions, and enhancing safety and future development. It is a great course that I can share with my students, because my university over here has a contract with Medical School of University of South Carolina, and so my students get it for only $35. The course itself is worth $3,500. So just so you know, so if you are wanting to develop your skills in that area, you're working with children from the ages of 3 to 18. I strongly encourage that you take that particular course. It's 3-5. If you were in the university taking that course yourself, you would pay $3,500 for the course. So and I'm not going to grade it. This is just for you. All right, so let me move on. So let BingPay know if you're interested. All right, so let's move back to this. All right. Now I'm going to talk about the final group project. The final group project. There are 4 major assignments in the class. The final group project is important. And because it's the only one that you actually get to work in groups. So I will show you what that is right now. So you're going to work in groups. You're going to choose a trauma-focused treatment modality. So you're going to choose a model from all, I think I have about 9 or 10 of them. You're going to choose one, and you are going to basically develop a training workshop for the treatment intervention. Now, I need to explain this. I need to explain this to you. What I'm talking about is not that you're going to actually, I'm not saying that you're going to actually train people in EMDR. I'm not saying that you're actually going to train people in somatic. You're literally going to train us about what the treatment is about. So you're going to do a research. What is in that research? You're going to say, okay, this is what the research shows. These are the pros and the cons. This is the founder. This is why they came about this treatment. These are the steps of the treatment. What is the price to train? And what are my thoughts? You have like 4 or 5 different sections that you have to do, so that the entire class can have a plethora of interventions that they might eventually get to train in. A few of them we actually offer at JARS, but some of them we don't. And so you have to decide, okay, I want to know more about EMDR. Well, you get a presentation on it. Well, this is the price. This is where you're going to get it. And maybe you want to train on that. So that's what the assignment about. The assignment is not saying that you are going to teach us EMDR. That's not what it's saying. The assignment is you're going to research EMDR, tell us what it's about, so that we can have a broad understanding of what it is. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, you all have to unmute yourself and talk to me. I can't have a quiet class. Does that make sense? So put it in the chat box.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so then let's go back. So if in your syllabus should have what I'm expecting on the slides. But so let me pull up a syllabus so that I can show you what I'm expecting on the slides. I'm just going to pull up a random syllabus. It might be from another class because I don't have time to look for yours right now. So let's see. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Yours should be about the same. Okay, so this is, yes, and when you go to your appendix, the appendix should be Appendix B. And if you don't have a syllabus, make sure you get one. As being paid for it, you need to have one. All right, so here's this final group presentation. And it says working in groups of threes. You don't have to be threes, it could be pairs, it could be three. It doesn't matter. That I'm flexible on that. Students, we choose a trauma-focused treatment modality from the list below and develop a training workshop for the treatment intervention. Students will also integrate into the synopsis information from at least 5 peer-reviewed articles and either support or challenge the efficacy of the treatment model. Each group will have 20 to 15 minutes. Actually, it depends. I might just give you maybe 10 to 15. We'll talk about that as we get to week 7. And the PowerPoint should include references on the slides, and you can read all of that yourself. Here are the different modalities. You're going to have seeking safety, which I'm going to go over today, prolonged cognitive, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I want to show you. There are the headings of your slides. History and overview of the intervention. Like I said, how did it come about? Who started it? Who is the founder? That's what we want to talk about. Of the intervention. Number 2, client population and specific disorders. What is the client population that can benefit or that it was created for? And the specific disorder. And number 3, efficacy. Does it work? Does it not work? What does the research say? We need to know the pros and the cons. And then you describe the intervention, like the steps they're taking. Okay, maybe in this particular intervention, they're like EMDR, there are 8 steps. Okay, so step number 1 is this, step number 2 is that, and you would tell us what it is. Number 5 is first facilitation and training. Basically, we're saying, how do I get trained in this and what does it cost? And number 6, your overall impression as a group. What do each of you think? Okay, so Janice thinks that blah, 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 blah. And Paul says it is this, and that is it. That is it. That is the work. You should not go over 14 to 15 slides, if that. And plan to spend at least 1 minute per slide. The first slide, the cover slide, and the references are included in the 13 to 15 pages of your slides. And then the second one is a brochure. You're going to create a brochure. You're going to use a template to create this. And for this brochure, basically, you're going to give us a cheat sheet. And I'm going to give you examples. Let me give you some examples. You're going to give us a cheat sheet of that PowerPoint in a brochure setting. So let me show you some examples of this. Before we do that, let me tell you what it says. Summarize your content, provide integral information, and then the references. So that's it. That is the final group project that's due in week number 8. Today's week number 2. This is due in week 8. All right, so let me stop sharing and I'll show you some examples. If you have any questions as I'm talking, please feel free to stop me. I'll show you some examples. All right, let's see. Here's one. Excuse me, my computer is not doing what it's supposed to do. Hold on. All right. Okay, that's one. This is 2 ACT sample. Let's see that. That's 2. Let's just show you a few samples here. That's 3. And that works. No, I don't make that one. All right. How about we use, let me show you this one. No, that's a nice one. Let's also look at one more sample and then I'll show it to you. Here's polyvagal. Let's look at that. This one is boring. Let's find another one. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't think, oh my God, there's a lot of work. Well, guess what? I need you to know what you know so that you can do this work effectively, okay? All right, I think we have enough now. Let me show you. Let me now share it with you. Okay. All right. Where are you guys, class? Let's share. Let me share my screen. And here we go. All right. So I'm going to show you some samples. And let us hide this. Okay, so this is just a sample. This is a PowerPoint. How do I close this one? Hold on. Anyway, I don't know how to close it. So here's the dialectical behavior. This was DBT that they did a research on. So that's their cover page. And there you go. So there's the population, was this best for. That's the efficacy. Description of the intervention. This is part of the interventions. What the heck is a dialectic? I like that. How do we do it? Themes to keep in mind. This is the founder. You can always use a video clip of the founder to explain in their own voice. DBT has a lot of skills, so this one is a lot. It's a lot, I think. And then, but there it is, their facilitation and training. This is what it looks like. Their impression, 3 people did this. Yes, Carrie. Yes, Dana's impression, and there's Elena. And that's it. Bibliography, references, done. That's it. That's what we're looking for. All right. This is a brochure for somatic, which I don't really like, so I'm not going to show you that. Here's one for IFS. Here's one for somatic. I really like this one, really good. Not more than 2 pages. Here's another one for somatic. Excellent, excellent sample. Which one is this one? Oh, this is IFS. IFS, history of the history, etc., etc. DBT. All right, so that's it. That's it. That's a little bit of the examples I'm going to show you. And I think you should have some samples in your class. If not, I will share some more with you, but you should have it. Any questions before I move forward? Just in terms of expectations, I will go over each one of the. I'll go over each one of the expectations. I mean, each one of the models in just a few minutes, so that, because today you're going to get into your groups. Today, I'm going to give you the group that you're going to present, if this makes sense. Yeah. All right. Any questions about just the format? Or any thoughts? Okay, I see some things in the chat. What's happening in the chat? Okay. Bingpe is saying that she thinks that she'll send you an updated syllabus. She doesn't think that she included it. It's fine, you need it. It's good. It makes a really well-rounded class. So no questions about the format? You all good? All right, so now let's look at your choices. And as I'm going over these choices, begin to think, oh, I want to know more about that. Oh, I want to know more about that, and write down your first 3 choices. Write it down, and then we'll talk about it later in a minute. All right, so let's take a look at this. I'm going to share my PowerPoint again. Oh, yeah, I have to close all these things that I was sharing first. This is not the PowerPoint we want to look at. This is the PowerPoint we want to look at. All right. So here we're going to look at the treatment modalities. We're going to look at all 10. I think I have 9 or 10 listed. The first one is seeking safety. The first one I want to look at is called seeking safety. Take notes if you want, just so you know what it's about, and then you can decide which one I want to work on. Which one do I want to work on? And when I'm in my group, we'll get into groups today. So when we're talking about seeking safety, it's first of all, it's an evidence-based model. But seeking safety is all about now, this present moment, right? How can I be safe from trauma or substance abuse in this moment, right? It is a very, what we call a safe model, because it addresses trauma and the co-occurring disorder. And I'll explain what all that means. So it's going to address trauma and addiction, trauma and eating disorder, trauma and whatever co-occurs with the trauma. But it does not require the client to focus into the narrative of what happened. So in this particular model, which is why it's called safe, is why it's called safety, it doesn't allow the client to actually go over the details of the disturbing trauma memories. So so and a lot of people, don't want to really go back and examine those memories in the way that we do in a lot of other models. So this particular model allows the client to work with where they are in the here and the now, right? In the here and the now. So that is the seeking safety. The second one is EMDR. EMDR is basically eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And you will find that this particular model has been deemed very effective, especially for people who are suffering from traumas that just refuse to dislodge, the traumas that they just can't seem to get over, right? And the whole point of this particular model is that the brain can actually dislodge trauma when you do a few of the reprocessing techniques in this. So they'll tell you, hold on to the memory of the trauma, and you are going to focus on movements, on the eye movements, or sometimes sounds, or sometimes just repetitive actions. The brain will dislodge that memory when you are conducting EMDR. And so it facilitates the processing and the accessing of traumatic memories, and allows the client to alleviate or dislodge them so that they can live their life. So that's EMDR. And then you have prolonged exposure therapy, which is the complete opposite of seeking safety, because in prolonged we'll call prolonged exposure therapy, PET, it is a type of CBT, but for trauma, right? And it helps you confront your fears. This whole idea of prolonged exposure is that it teaches your clients that you can gradually approach your trauma-related memories, your feelings, and your situations and not get hurt. A lot of people want to avoid the memories of their trauma. They want to avoid the reminders of the traumas that they've experienced in life. And so what PET does is that it explains to you that those memories and those cues are not dangerous. They're not dangerous, and they don't need to be avoided. In fact, according to PET, it says that when you try to avoid the memories, you actually reinforce the traumatic fears and all of the responses that are associated with it. So the avoidance itself reinforces the trauma. So prolonged exposure allows you to gradually expose your clients to the memories of the traumas and get help, because this time they're exposed to it in the presence of a therapeutic coach, or in the presence of a psychologist, and the presence of a therapist. All right. And it works. It works for CPTSD, complex trauma, and it also works for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so it works. This is very effective. And then you have the cognitive processing therapy. So the cognitive processing therapy, known as CPT, is a behavioral change type of trauma that allows you to re-examine the thought patterns of the client because of their symptoms. So the CPT will help your client and yourself, if you're participating in this, to actually modify unhelpful belief systems that are related to trauma. So when you're doing this, the client then creates a new understanding of why that has happened, or how they can reduce the negative affect. Now, today we're going to define what trauma is. What trauma really is unprocessed stuff, unprocessed trauma. When a trauma that is not integrated will remain isolated in the brain, and it will hijack your brain. Now you're going to find out about this, I think, in week 3 or 4, when we actually talk, week 4, when we actually talk about the brain, right? So this is what trauma is. So that's what CPT does for you. And then we go to DBT, which we actually teach in at JARS. There's a course on CBT on DBT here. So this is, if this particular modality, really, you need to at least get the book, because it is filled with techniques and skills and everything. So the whole idea of dialectic, dialectic comes from this belief that you can hold two opposite beliefs or two opposite thoughts, which usually happens in trauma. I love this person, but then they abused me. You hold those two opposing thoughts. But in the therapy, we're able to have acceptance and change and bring better results by that you would have from either one. So is the idea of merging all of the dialectics of trauma that's going on in your brain, merging them to create a new belief systems that will actually lead you to a better, healthier living life. Somatic. Now, somatic is pivotal in training. It used to be back in the day when we used to do trauma work, it was always talk therapy. Trauma was always about talk therapy, talk about your traumas and this. But we have found out, research has shown us that that cannot be the only way, because trauma is stored in the body. If you've not heard of this book is called The Body Keeps the Score. It's by Van der Kolk. This in the US and basically in the world is one of the originators of the whole stuff of PTSD, et cetera, et cetera. This book and the one that we have for the class, which is the Herman book, very, very, very effective. They're the ones that conducted the first research on PTSD. But this book is The Body Keeps Score. And one of the things I love about it is anybody can have it. Actually, one of my daughters went to some party and they handed this out as souvenirs. So I'm telling you, instead of giving out cups and spoons, give somebody a gift that they would love. But trauma is stored in the body. Have you ever watched National Geographic, or even if you have a dog or something, when they get hurt, and when this lion gets hurt in the wilderness and stuff, what happens? They shake themselves up and they run away, because that's them shaking. That's a trauma shake. That's a trauma shake. But we human beings don't do that. We keep everything stored. So traumatic experiencing is literally about getting rid of the traumas in your bodies. If you can get rid of the trauma that is in the body, your everything begins to work better. That's somatic. Somatic experiencing is not the only body centered approach that we have. It is, however, the one that I've assigned to you. So it's a form of trauma therapy that literally allows the client to pay attention to introspective and kinesthetic stuff in that's going on with them. The research was done that says that when you work on the body, it is so much more effective than taking medication. And I have nothing against medication. We need to get, especially women, they carry a lot of this stuff. You need to get rid of the trauma that's stored in the body. All right, so stress inoculation therapy. So when we're talking about stress inoculation, is exactly what it means. Inoculation, where when you take shots, you take shots for childhood diseases, and then we just recently all did our COVID vaccines. So that's what this is. It helps your clients prepare for future chronic stress, future toxic stress with minimum upset. So the use of the term inoculation is a vaccine is basically based on this idea that the clinician can inoculate or prepare the client to become resistant to the effects of the stressors they're going to experience in future, just like the way vaccinations work. It makes you resistant to the effect of the disease. So that's what SIT is about, stress inoculation therapy. And then we have acceptance and commitment, which you also teach at JARS. So for the ACT, basically this approach, I always thought, I can't believe it was an American that came up with it, because it sounds like very Middle Eastern, acceptance and commitment. And by the way, ACT is the most popular model in the entire world. It has been researched in different nations over and over. So those of you who are going to work on this, you're going to have a plethora of research. In the United States, the military uses it. What's it called? Those who come back from the veterans use it. Different hospitals use this. So the use of acceptance is this idea very foreign to the Western world. That's very foreign to the Western world, because the Western world, we're always talking about, oh, no worry, be happy. Acceptance therapy is very different. Acceptance says that the most common thing in the world is suffering, that everybody suffers. So there's this idea of adverse normality, that adversity is just part of the human structure, of the human system. And so ACT is saying that we get ourselves into trouble because we're resistant. So for example, I can't sleep at night. Okay, you're saying, oh, I can't sleep. Oh my God, I can't sleep. I can't believe I can't sleep. Then you get anxious because now you can't sleep, and now you have anxiety, and now you're like, oh my God, I got anxiety. So the anxiety begins to build up. Acceptance says, just accept that you can't sleep tonight. You're not sleeping. Okay, tonight is the night I'm not sleeping. You accept it. Your body is no longer resistant, it comes down. You're down regulated. And before you know it, you're asleep. Why? Because you're no longer resisting it. And so acceptance and commitment ACT is saying you have to be active in your own recovery. You have to be active in your own recovery. And it is, and the word active is active in the acceptance. It wants you to stop avoiding, stop denying, and stop struggling. Stop avoiding, stop denying, and stop struggling. Accept those deeper feelings, that they're what you needed to feel for the situation that you're in. So yes, I'm feeling depressed because of the crap in my life, access, yes, I'm depressed. Right? And then have the action plans to further help yourself be the kind of person.
So, what's in ọgbà mi lélẹ̀? O wá sọ́gbà mi lélẹ̀. Àwọn community mi lélẹ̀. My second community. Alpha.
Bims, are you there? Can you help me
Oh,
mute that person?
Sorry, we'll still do our tea party.
Yes,
That's why I
ma'am.
asked that day.
Oh, no. Okay, I'll be seeing everybody today. My
Who
mom
is it? Who is it?
one by one. Oh, no. Okay, so that's how everybody knows the woman. I don't know them. It is
Bims, you're the one. It's
okay,
Bims that's actually the one that's talking.
Time, and they listen.
Make me co-host so I can help you turn it off.
Oh my God, Abby, where are you? Okay, there
I'm
you
here.
go. It was Binke that was actually
Don't mind
interrupting
that.
my class. Can you believe this? All right, let's go back. Okay, so that's ACT. Then the last one, I believe, for your group, I don't think I added polyvagal for your group, which would have been nice. But IFS, this is a beautiful, just a wonderful system model. IFS is this whole idea. And if you take the family course, we have a family course at JARS, it stems from the family systems. And IFS is this just transformative model that says basically this, that we're made up of parts. We're made up of parts. We're made up of parts. And each part has come to tell you something. So anytime, how do I explain this to you? So those parts have functions. So anytime, for example, if you've been hurt in a prior relationship and you want to get into another relationship and there's a part of your body that's saying, don't go there. No, they're going to hurt you. They're going to hurt you. That's just a part of your body. And it is saying that because it wants to protect you from hurt. But IFS also says something powerful that can be spiritual or existential. It says that there is a core of you. There is a core self that knows how to heal itself. There's a core of you that knows how to heal itself. But because these parts are so loud, there's a there's a firefighter part, there's a protective part, all these parts that are loud. You know, somebody who's always aggressive, somebody who's always fighting, always, give it to you before you give it to them. They're just they're saying something to you. But those parts are so loud that we don't hear the voice of the core self. So the job of the therapist or the person working in this is to help the parts calm down so we can hear what the core self is saying. So in IFS, all the parts are welcome. There are no diagnoses in IFS. There is no pathologizing in IFS. IFS is saying, come as you are with everything, and we'll just help you sort it out. That's what IFS is about. All right, so I am going to stop there. Those are the 9 models you're going to work on. I told you to actually, choose your top 3. So when I call your name, you are going to tell me, and another thing is, don't get what is the word? Don't get too close to any number that you have. Oh, I really want to work on IFS. Well, you might not get it. So, but you will get something. Does this make sense? So we're all going to be in this together. And I will, when I call your name, you'll see how this is going to work in a minute, okay? So when I call your name, and I know some of you are in groups, so you're going to have to let everybody in your group talk when I call the name, okay? All right. Okay, so let's start. Faven. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I already did.
Faven, what was your number one choice?
Seeking safety.
Is there anyone there with you?
No, I am by
Okay.
myself.
Okay, so seeking safety. And does
Yeah.
anyone else in the class would like to work on seeking safety? Raise your hand. Seeking safety. Anyone else? Okay, is that Regat?
Regards.
Anyone else? Abby? Okay. All right, that's enough. Okay, now we go to Pat. Abby, put on your hand, please.
My first choice will be stress inoculation therapy.
Stress inoculation. So Pat, anyone interested in stress inoculation? Okay, you don't have any takers. What's your second one?
Prolonged exposure therapy.
All right, prolonged exposure. That's a good, anyone's interested in prolonged exposure, raise your hand or mute yourself. Prolonged exposure, anyone? Seriously? What's your there's too many, you have to be interested in one thing. All right, no one else is interested in prolonged exposure, really? Okay, Busayo. Okay, so let's move on. Busayo, you can put down your hand. Meseret. Meseret, could you on, oh yeah. Meseret, you're there with a group, correct? Uh-oh, can they not hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Okay, are you there with a group?
Yes, yes, I am.
All right, how many of you in the group?
Okay.
How many of you in your group? I don't think they can hear me. Meseret, you can hear me. So how many people in the group?
We are sisters.
What did you say?
We are six.
You're 6. Okay, what are
Yeah.
you interested in?
Seeking safety.
No, seeking safety is already off the table. Once 3 people have done it, you have to choose another one. What was the next one?
Cognitive processing therapy.
What did you say?
Cognitive processing therapy.
She said that's cognitive processing therapy.
Oh, thank you. All right, so you're interested in the CPT? All right.
Yeah.
How many of you in the group want to do that? No, wait, hold on. Put down your, nobody put up their hands. Like I'm talking to the Meseret group. How many of you in the group are wanting to do this? You can be more than 3. Two of you. What's the other person's name? What's the other person's name?
Zenkiel.
Okay, can you put it in the chat box for me? Please put it in the chat box. All right, what is it? So somebody else, they need one more person. I can take one more person in CPT. Who else in the class wants to do CPT? Raise your hand. Anyone else in the class wants to do CPT?
Yeah.
Oronke?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Ronke wants to do CPT. Zime, okay, hold on. I don't want Zemeka.
Yeah.
Sorry if I didn't get that correctly.
That's correct. That's
All
correct.
right.
Okay.
All right. Now going back to, oh wait, Abraham Verga. You want to do CPT too? Abraham? Abraham.
Silakan.
Abraham? Okay, I'm going to put Abraham's name down. All right, great. Also, Mazarette, in your group, since you've given me 2 names out of 4, what do the other ones want to do? Get into the camera so I can see the faces, please. Okay, all right. So, Rigat, okay. You guys, okay, Rigat, what do you want to do? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. All right. What would you give me your number 1? What is it? Rigat?
Yes.
What
Or
is
a
your choice, please? All right, I'm gonna move on. Biram, Gurme, that group. Can you unmute yourself? Birham, okay, say your names for me, please.
Yes.
All right, you guys need to be ready with your number 1, 2, 3 choices. Come on, let's go, let's go.
EMDR.
EMDR, okay, EMDR. All 3 of you do the same thing. That makes my life so much easier. Is it 2 of you or 3 of you?
2.
There's 2 of you. Okay, would he? Are you also interested in EMDR?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me your names, please. Because I see 3 names on the screen.
2.
What's your name?
Burhan and Mulgeta.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else interested in EMDR? EMDR, because I only have 2 people working on that. Anyone else interested in EMDR? Okay. All right. Ejiro? Ejiro, mute yourself, please.
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Go ahead. What's your choice?
Acceptance and commitment therapy.
Excellent choice. Who else wants to do acceptance and commitment? Ayo Nitemi. ACT, Layla and Abby. Abby, how many? Abby, you can do, you already have something, don't you? And Layla. Abby,
DVT. I did DVT. I like ACT.
wait, I thought you were in seeking safety.
Yes,
So,
I am.
Okay,
Oh,
but
is it
now you
one?
just, which one do you want? ACT or seeking safety?
Seeking safety.
Okay, so we'll take you off of this one. Okay, so Leila, Ayo, and you can put down your hands. Who hasn't selected something? Because I think who has not selected something, a group? Because let me tell you what I have right now. I have Seeking Safety, Faven, Regat, and Abby. I have Prolonged Exposure. I have Pat and Busayo. I have CPT, Meseret, Ronke, Semikal, and Abraham. EMDR, I have Braham, and I can't say the last name, the start with an S. And then ACT, I have Ejiro, Ayo, Leila. If you didn't hear your name, means you don't have a group.
Salamat also have,
Salamat,
chosen acceptance and commitment.
what did you say?
Salamat also have mentioned in the chat box. She have chosen acceptance and commitment therapy.
Oh, okay. So let me add you. So there are 4 people in that group then. All right. Okay, so please do me a favor in the chat box. Write your name and your your choice. Your name and your choice, so I can make sure it matches what I have. Because I think there's about 3 or 4 people who do not have a group. But I think it might be network or something that's doing that. So put in the chat box and then I'm going to move on. And the presentation is due in week number 8. In week number 8. All right. In week number 8. Put it in the chat box, what we have all agreed to. Put in the chat. All right. All right. Excellent. Thank you for doing that. And so now let's move on. Are you all with me now? Okay, so always have your camera on unless you've taken permission to have it off. If you are off, you're not in class. Unless there's a network issue that you've taken permission to have your camera off, you need to use the restroom, you have your camera off, and then you come back. Those are understandable. All right. Okay. Then we move on. Meseret, go ahead. What's your question?
I know more about the EMDR. I just want to be clear.
Say that again.
I want to be clear more about the EMDR.
What do you mean?
All right, sister.
You want me to talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah.
Okay, so EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And basically it's a type of psychotherapy that enables people to heal from symptoms of trauma, right? And they usually utilized for trauma symptoms that refuse to dislodge. So sometimes you find people who have done all kinds of therapy, but they're still traumatized. And when they use EMDR, they really talk about how it has helped them. EMDR also utilizes, some people even classify it as a somatic because it helps it uses techniques, all right? Techniques that have repetitive movements. So what it is you're going to hold the thoughts of the trauma, and with this repetitive movements, at the same time, you're holding the thought of the trauma and you're doing the repetitive movements of the brain begins to dislodge the trauma that is there. All right. And so there are techniques in EMDR that will help you do that. Basically, that's the gist of it. your job is to tell us what it's about. That's what the class is. You're going to find out what it is, how it's practiced, how much I'm going to pay for it, what are your thoughts about it, and that's your presentation. Ms. Rek, does that answer your question?
Thank you so much.
All right, so are
I
you
got
wanting
it.
to be a part of EMDR then?
No, I'm actually.
Okay, excellent. All right then, so let's go to our PowerPoint. All right, so next week, we're going to utilize the DSM. So if you don't have the DSM, we actually give you, I think we give you the section of the VFM for free, this section. If you don't have it, get it for BIMS, you should have it. So next week, it's going to be all about what the DSM says about trauma. All right, but we know that trauma is pervasive. We understand this, right? We understand this. So let me, without PowerPoints, this is the time when you're going to talk to me. All right, we know that it is pervasive. You know, trauma is usually it stems from events in our lives and circumstances in our lives that we just were not ready to deal with. Which came at us, and that sometimes, just give me one quick second. My daughter is leaving for school. I need to hug her. Give me one. Come. Drive safely. All right. Okay. All right. Back in class. Okay. So yes, that's my baby. She's going back to school, the last one. And here we go. Okay. So the thing about trauma is that it is both biological, neurological, physiological, emotional, and psychological. So it impacts every area of your life. And it impacts your functioning and it could impact your spiritual well-being, your emotional well-being. It can impact everything. So I'm going to show you two YouTube videos that we're going to watch in class. So hold on. All right, so the first one. All right, so let's share my screen. And this is Dr. Gabor Mate. If you haven't heard of him, he's really prolific in the area of trauma. Let's see. We are going to share my screen. Let's make sure we have the sound on. Oh, wait, it's muted.
And also you get to see them in the context of their... As a family physician, you get to see people before they get sick. So you know what their personalities are like for years before they get sick. And also you get to see them in the context of their families, including their multi-generational family of origin. By the way, just as an interesting exercise, let me just ask you right now. I'm not going to ask you any personal details, but how many of you in the last 5 years have been to a respirologist, a gastroenterologist, a cardiologist, a neurologist, a gastroenterologist, a dermatologist, maybe I said rheumatologist, any kind of an ologist? Just put your hand up. Okay, great. All right. Now, put your hand up again if they asked you about childhood trauma. One person. That's great. If they asked you about stresses in your relationship with your spouse, a couple of hands. About job stress. Yeah, so we have maybe like a 5 to 10%, and that's really good if they ask you about it. And I wonder how long they took the discussion, but it doesn't even occur to them. But I'm telling you, all of you who went to these specialists were there because of childhood trauma. Virtually all of you. Now, there are diseases that you can't put into that category. There are genetic diseases, like there's one that runs in my family, muscular dystrophy. If you have the gene, you'll have the disease. It's nothing to do with life or stress. It's just, although that can affect the course of it, but whether you get it or not is simply genetic. Those diseases are extraordinarily rare. Like 1 in 10,000 of the population will have a disease like that. Most diseases have little or nothing to do with genetic factors. So these are then the patterns that I noticed in my clients. And by the way, when I said childhood trauma, probably some of you are at least internally shaking your heads because you're looking at your life, and I never had any trauma. But I'll knock that out of you in a half an hour or so, okay? As a matter of fact, I conducted what I call the Happy Childhood Challenge, which I'll tell you about more later. Because it all depends on how you use the word trauma. And trauma, for me, and that's a whole other lecture, but trauma is not what happens to you. It's what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you. And things can happen inside you for which you don't need very dramatic events. But trauma essentially is a restriction of your capacity. It's a limitation. It's a constriction in the body. It's a constriction in your mental capacity to respond in the present moment from your authentic self. Essentially, trauma is a restriction of your authentic self in the present moment. That's what trauma is. For which you don't need dramatic events.
Oh, that's Dr. Gabor Mate, and I love what he said about it is one of the medically trained people who is actually trauma focused in the world. And I love what he said about the diseases. Like a lot of the stuff that happens that we think, oh my God, this is just a medical issue, and they're all stemmed in traumas. Very few diseases actually happen to us because of genetics. A lot of the stuff is traumatic, traumas that we've carried. And trauma changes who God made you to be. Trauma changes your authentic self. And a lot of the time we manage our lives and we never become or show up in our world the way God has made us to show up, because trauma happened in your childhood and trauma happened in your growing up lives and trauma happens in your present life, right? And then we are living these shadow lives. We get to live these lives that are covered with all kinds of stuff. And we even plan our lives accordingly. So what does that mean? What does that look like? If I have been raised by a parent, a father, a mother who was very abusive in nature, all right? If I've been raised by somebody who was very authoritarian, who's told you what to do, how to do, what to think, if you're raised in a culture that's very patriarchal, like a lot of us from Africa, where you're told exactly that this is how you order your lives, do you know that you're going to have difficulty being creative, difficulty having your own voice, and so you're going to find yourself a church where they tell you what to do. You're going to find a job where they tell you what to do. You're going to marry somebody who is going to tell you what to do, because that's all you know, and you're going to call that life. Trauma work is helping people uncover, discover, recover who God made them to be authentically, so you can live your life, so that you can show up in the best of yourself. You're going to see next week when we actually look at the DSM definition of trauma. That is very restrictive. All right. So there are traumatic events and there's trauma. So that's what Gabor was talking about when he said trauma is not what happened to you, it's what's happening inside of you. That's what trauma is. Because we can all experience the same thing and react to them differently. Some will get traumatized and some will not get traumatized. So traumatic events can be a single event. It could be multiple events, but it has completely come to override your natural ability to function. And that is one of the saddest things in life. This is why I do this work. Because it completely comes to transform you into something else, to make you into somebody else. And here we are, you know, especially those of us, I'm a Christian, so I can talk from a Christian perspective. And especially for those people who are Christian, where you're binding the devil, you're doing this, and you should do all of those things. But a lot of the times what happened, the devil has nothing to do with it. You're living a life that is innately not what the original pattern was. So traumatizing events will take a very serious toll on you. It will take a serious toll on everything that you have. And a lot of the times, what Gabor was saying, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be, okay, like I have the Ethiopians here today. They have a war that went on. I don't know if it's still going on, but but they lost over 1 million people. 1 million people died. And we're not talking about in 1900s. We're talking about a couple years ago. So that's an active trauma that not only impacts the individuals, the families of those who died, doesn't only impact them, it impacts the community, and it impacts the entire systems, and it impacts the nation. Now we also have some Nigerians on here. You don't have a civil war like we're talking about in Ethiopia, but you do have the Boko Haram, we have the terrorist killing, we have the kidnappings, we have all of these things that are going on. Those are big things. Those are huge. But let me show you something that we never talk about. All right, moving. These are some of the definitions. These are some of the definitions of trauma. We're going to look at this DSM next week. So what are the hallmarks of trauma? They're usually unexpected, unprepared. There's nothing you could have done to prevent it. And it actually, it comes with trauma reactions. But people say, well, look, but some things I know is going to happen, and then still, and it's still traumatic. You never emotionally or psychologically prepare for the wounding of the human soul. It's never, there's no way you can prepare for that. Who can be traumatized, people? This is not a trick question. Who can be traumatized? Unmute yourself. Raise your hand. Put it in the chat box. Who can be traumatized? And don't give me the all of us answer. I get that. Specifically, who can be traumatized? Rigat, your hand is up. Unmute yourself. All right. Your hand is up. Unmute yourself. Speak. Okay, let's see what you have in the chat box.
Anyone can be traumatized.
Yes, I just said, I don't want you to say anyone. I need specifics. Yes, somebody said women. Thank you. Absolutely.
Men, children.
Yeah. Women, men, children. You guys are funny. I need more specifics, you know? Mothers.
The mothers, the handicapped.
Yes, people who are disabled. Absolutely. You know, and we can go on and on and on. And and we'll also talk about this. Everything you have said is correct. However, you need to know this, that when we're talking about who can be traumatized, it's not just people that can be traumatized. All right? It's not just people. It's not just individuals that can be traumatized, is what I'm saying. It's not just individuals that can be traumatized. Families can be traumatized. Families can be traumatized. If one person is going through a trauma in a family, it impacts the entire system. Entirety of the system. So, for example, if your mother or your father, and what's one of the horrible things in our culture is people don't get tested and they don't even believe in mental health stuff. So you don't know what is in your family background, right? So you can have a parent who is psychologically, emotionally unavailable. Guess what? That traumatizes the children. It traumatizes the entire field. So families can be traumatized. If you have someone who is medically sick in the family, it traumatizes the entire system. If you have an early death in the family, it traumatizes the entire system. So it only takes one person for a system to be wounded. But we don't talk about it. And we think, oh, I have parents all the time that will bring their children to me to fix. But guess what? The problem is not the child. The problem is the system. The system has done something. The system, there's something with the system. And parents can be very defensive, but we did everything right and we did everything good. Everything. You don't know what you don't know. Part of this course is to let us know that trauma is pervasive. When I first started learning of trauma, I literally called all my kids and say, I am so sorry. I apologize. When I did this, because I thought I was doing the right thing. I had to have that conversation with them. And that opened them up to tell me the truth. Yeah, and we had that conversation. You have to be humble enough to know that you were not perfect. Nobody is. If you had your own issues will spill into the family system. Your issues will spill into the family systems. Your husband issues will spill into the family system. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does this make sense? All right. So communities can be impacted. Communities. So you hear all this news, this happened in that community and that happened in that community, and we think that we can keep living our lives. No, it impacts everybody. So if your next door neighbor was gotten shot, all right, even though they didn't come to your house, immediately your systems will go into a fight or flight. It doesn't tell you, but it would immediately kick in because you're going to say, lock the door, make sure you look left and right, make sure you don't go out at night. all of a sudden we're all traumatized now. It impacts groups of people, African Americans in the United States, Black people all over the world, Native Americans, all of the dehumanizing treatment Native Americans had in this country, for example. Systems can be, tribes and groups can be traumatized. You talk about different parts of your different countries that are traumatized. All kinds of isms, racism, prejudices, ageism. You have all these isms that go on in our lives that can cause groups of people to be traumatized. Historical trauma is a thing. Historical trauma. Colonization is a historical trauma. I was talking to one guy in Nigeria, in Lagos one time, and I was talking about historical trauma. I was like, that happened a long time ago. That's not part of our reality now. Are you serious? It is a part of the African story, which means is in the very fabric of how we gather ourselves, except for Ethiopia, who was not colonized. But I can tell you, you guys got your own historical trauma. So you have all of these things that's happening that nobody pays attention to. Tribalism. Tribalism is a type of trauma. Classism, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we take a look at all the events, those are the big events, big ones that you're going to talk about in your groups today. And I should probably give you a break. All right, so before I move on, it's 10:24. I'm going to talk for another 6 minutes and then I'll give you a break, all right? So when we have all those those are what we call the big T's, or the type 1 traumas. Type 1, I don't like to use the word big or little anymore. Type 1 traumas. So let me pull up the slide for that. So those things that I have just talked about, those are your type 1 traumas. Those are your big T's. They're your type 1 traumas. We know them. We've talked about them. In Africa, we understand trauma very well. They're in our faces every day. We get it. A lot of people of color understand this. You understand? So we get it. And we can identify it and say, oh, that's trauma, that's trauma, that's trauma, that's trauma. How about those things that we cannot readily identify? Those things that we cannot readily identify. How about those? Let's talk about those. They're little T's. All your little, or we don't, by the way, we don't use the term little T's anymore. They're type 2 traumas or adverse life experiences. Adverse life experiences is what they're called now. So those adverse life experiences or type 2 traumas are just as egregious to us as type 1 traumas. Favoritism. Favoritism, when you favor one child over the other. Type 2 trauma. People are like, well, wait, how can that be a type 2 trauma? Favoritism puts too high a demand on the one who is favored. And it also tells those who were not favored that they're not worth your time. They're not whole human beings that are worthy of attention. So the one who is favored is traumatized. The one who is not favored is traumatized. And most of the time, they don't know it. They don't know it. When you have clients and you're talking to them and you see how their life has unfolded, They never connected the dots. They never connected the dots. Put downs, criticisms, emotional neglect. When you withdraw attention from somebody, you decide to punish your spouse by not giving them you. All types of nagging, type 2. All of these are type 2 traumas, and they're just as insidious as type 1 traumas. Is this making sense? They're just as insidious as type 1 traumas. So you got type 1 traumas and you have type 2 traumas. Abraham, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
So thank you. And I have a question.
Ask your question.
So I have a question. Just type 1 and type 2 traumas. So is type 2 an outcome of type 1, or it is standing by itself?
Abraham, can you say that again? I don't really know what you're saying, please. Or you can just type it in the chat box.
Okay, yes. Is type 2 trauma as an outcome of type 1, or
okay, I see. Okay.
Type 2 as it is.
Okay, excellent question. Type 2 traumas and type 1 traumas can coexist together, but you can have a type 2 trauma without a type 1. It's not a result of a type 1. It is its own trauma. It is its own type of trauma. Is this making sense? So there might never have been a type 1 trauma, and type 2 traumas can exist independently. Good question. Anybody else? All right, so, and you take a look and you're like, okay, what does that look like? All right, so I have a client, or had clients, where they would say things like, they exhibit perfectionism. You know, they want everything to be perfect. Then they get anxiety if something doesn't go well. You know, they understand that, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't do well in this, and that could almost kill them. Everything has to be perfect in their life. Sometimes when you trace that back, part of the trauma work is to see where that started from. A lot of the times, it's not usually type 1 traumas. It could be type 2 traumas. What happened in that house? What happened in that house is what you're looking at. And then you would find some of them would say things like, you know, I was overlooked by my parents. Some of them will say, like, I was the favorite child. You know, put downs. Do you guys know Maslow's hierarchy? Maslow's hierarchy. If you don't know about Maslow's hierarchy, go look for it and take a look at it. On Maslow's hierarchy, the first 2-3 layers, the bottom layer of the hierarchy. Actually, let me show you. Let's just pull it up. How about that? Let's pull it up. Let us pull it up. Oh, wait, I said I was going to give you a break. If you all don't remind me of breaks, I'll just keep talking. You have to remind me. All right, take a...
Let's do the Maslow hierarchy first before we go on break. Please.
Okay, y'all. Okay, want to do Maslow? All right, let's do the Maslow. All right, so I'm going to show you this, and then we'll take a break, all right? All right, thank you, Abby. All right, so here it is. Let me share my screen. All right, let's go. So look at this Maslow's hierarchy. It's a pyramid. Okay, it's usually a pyramid. All this other stuff is just to explain it. Now, look at the very bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy are your physiological needs. So air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. Those are basic human needs. Basic human needs. If you are not guaranteed any one of these things in life, you will be a traumatized child. So basically, if you don't know where you're going to sleep the next day, if you're usually moving from house to house, if something happened to your shelter, if you have to live with other people, you're constantly moving around, you don't know, you don't have money for clothes, you don't know, your sleep is deprived because you never know where you're going to sleep. If you don't have access to the bottom layer of that becomes a traumatic event in your life. And also, if you're a parent and you punish a child with any one of this, and look at the second layer. The second layer is personal security, employment, resources, health, property. If you do not have those basic things, those are basic human needs. I don't have personal security. I don't know that I am not safe. If you're not safe, if you don't have the job that you need to get your money, you don't have money that is employment that is paying you well. If you do not have the resources you need, the access you need, all of those basic needs. See the bottom layer, the physiological needs. If you're a parent and you punish your child with any one of this, that's abuse. That is abuse. If you say you're not going to sleep today, you're not going to sleep today because of ABCD. I had a client whose dad will wake them up at 3 a.m. in the morning, line them all up in the kitchen and tell them to start scrubbing the floor at 3 a.m. Physiological needs is been abused. That's a trauma. Parents who say you're not going to eat this today because you did wrong. That is an abuse. If you're moving from place to place to place to place with your child, it happens to a lot of people in the military, it happens to a lot of people, ambassadors, it happens to a whole bunch of people who move constantly. But you don't know the trauma that's been caused because the child then has to readjust to different schools. If you're constantly moving your child out of school, you put them in this school, this one closes down, you put them in another one, this one, you're kind of moving around, type 2 traumas. Then type 2 traumas happen also in the second hierarchy. And number 3, right here, number 3, love and belonging, friendships, intimacy, family, and sense of, what is that? Sense of connection. That third one is the product of 1 and 2. That third level, usually people who are traumatized can't even get there. So here's what I want to show you in this hierarchy. A lot of people for the rest of their lives will be on number 1, maybe 2, for the rest of their lives. Forget self-actualization. Most people will be in 1 and 2 because you're constantly fighting for survival, constantly fighting to survive, constantly fighting for food, constantly fighting for shelter, constantly having to fulfill your needs. So that's not the life God planned for us. It's supposed to be a full life that is thriving, but we remain in number 1, maybe 2. So one of the reasons I do this job is so that if you are getting people that come to you and you're working with people, you not only work with psychological, emotional, mental health needs, but you got to go to the root. You have to find the traumas and heal them, because that is when life really begins to make sense. I'll see you in 10 minutes. $10 minutes, guys, not 10 African minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, it's 10 minutes. Let's come back to class. All right, ladies and gentlemen, 10 minutes. Let's come back to class. Are we back? Well, I'm going to start. I hope you took your 10 minutes. When we say a break, this is learning to take care of ourselves. So when you take your break, take a break. Like actually go get some water, get some juice, stretch, do whatever, and then come back to class. And so it's been 10 minutes and change right now. So we're gonna go, but I see half the class is not back. We need to be on time. How do I know you're back is when you turn on your video. Any questions before I move on? Any questions, any thoughts? Put them in the chat box or just raise your hands. Okay, so barring none, we're gonna go back. Okay, Salamat. Salamat, yeah. Unmute yourself. Go ahead. Can't hear you. What is your question? Okay, put in the chat box. I can't hear you. Put in the chat box. All right, another hand up, Olaide. Wait, Olaide, wait, Olaide, can you show your face and unmute yourself? Because I don't think I have a group for you. I don't see your name in any of the groups. Is Olaide there? All right.
I had issues logging in.
Okay, so did you log in late? Is that why I don't see you in any of the groups?
I logged in 6:12.
What did you say?
I logged in at 6:12, 12 minutes
Okay,
past 6.
So were you there when we were giving out the groups?
No, I was struggling.
Okay, all right then. So we'll get with BIMS and she will help you get into one of the groups, okay? Meanwhile, what's your question? Because you have your hand up.
Yes, I was wondering, we've talked about, I was able to catch the last bit of trauma, as it affects communities, trauma as it affects individuals and trauma as it affects, different classes of events,
Right.
Historical events and all of that. Would I be able to documents to sort it, so that we can read further?
Yes, you have you should be, we have a book. We have a book, from a Herman book, and we also have PDFs. So it should be in your class. So get with Bingpay if you don't have it. And we have a free copy of the book for everybody. You should have it, and you should be reading it before you come to class.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
And Salamat. Wait, sorry, Olaide, were you saying something?
No, I
All right.
was saying thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you put down your hand? So I don't think you want to say something. All right, so Salamat's question is it's relevant. She says that how can a favorite child be traumatized? Oh wow, yes, absolutely. All right, so I'll give you an example. If your favorite, there's a favorite client, let's say you have a client, he's a favorite child. The favorite child, by his parents, says, you can do no wrong. This is what, this is who you are. You're going to be this, you're going to be that. They give him or her money that they don't give the other children. Just everybody knows this is a favorite child. that child then takes the mentality that I cannot fall in my parents' eyes because I don't want to be like the other ones that are not favored. So he or she will continue to live their lives to meet adult expectation. They might not even be experience a good child and being a child. They will be parentified. So they're always living up to a standard, all right, that a parent has said they are. Some of them can become very what's the word, where they expect everything because everything has been given to this favored child, so they're very intolerant of people, and they can become perfectionists, right? And then what happens is nobody can ever meet that standard that you have put that child on. You cannot. And so what happens is this child then becomes an adult, and this child now goes, I never even had a childhood because I was constantly trying to please these parents, right? And this child cannot even tell them that they failed in anything, or if they fail in something, usually for a normal person, regular person, healthy person, if you fail, you're like, okay, that didn't work. Let me do it again. For a child who's been favored, they've been raised that the world revolves around them, and they are expecting number 10. So when they fail, they can literally crash. They can literally crash. And that's how they will live their adult lives. And then they will have almost a kind of survival guilt. And that's the guilt that these others are not experiencing what I'm experiencing. Why me? So we think the favored child can be a good thing. Oh, well, I get this, but it actually becomes a type 2 trauma. Does that make sense, Salamawet? Yes, no? Where'd she go? Is she here? I think she dropped off. Oh, there she is. Does that make sense? Thumbs up, thumbs down, so you good? Okay, excellent. All right, so let's move on in our conversations. Like I was telling you, we are going to examine those different components. We're going to talk about the brain in week 4. We're going to talk about the brain, and you're going to see what actually happens in the brain during trauma. So a lot of it, like I said, the trauma is a neurological, biological, physiological, emotional, and psychological disease. Honestly, I think that when we're talking about the big sin that Christians talk about, I think it's trauma. Because that is the one thing that can shake you from the core of who you are. All right, so now let's move on. All right, let's move on. There's a few things I still want to talk about, and hopefully you can get into groups at some point. But let's go backwards. Okay, so when we're talking about traumatic reactions, what are some of the traumatic reactions that we can identify? Right? What are some of those traumatic? And we're going to talk about this throughout the course of this class. First of all, I want you to understand something, that when we're talking about traumatic events, those are common. We are always going to have traumatic events, but not everyone is traumatized. So trauma is the reaction to traumatic events. And like Gabor said, trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens in you. So it is our reaction to events, to things around us. All right. So we are going to have traumatic reactions. And some of those reactions are in our bodies. Your body is going to react. You're going to have heart palpitations. You're going to be upregulated. You're constantly maybe yelling. You find yourself yelling all the time. It's a trauma reaction. You find yourself, impacts your sleep, impacts everything, right? And they're the elements. If you find that your life revolves around the memories of the traumatic events, and you're constantly reliving it, that's probably PTSD. You're constantly reliving it. The images, the smells, the this, the sound, what they said to you, you're reliving it in your head. Each time you relive it, the brain doesn't know the difference between the present and the past. It's just like God. There is no, it's the same today. Yes, the brain is in the now. The memories are in the now. And so when you are reliving them, the brain doesn't say, oh, that is happening. That happened to me 20 years ago. No, the brain thinks that you're experiencing it right now. So let me explain this. Let me explain this more powerfully to you. Watch this. When we say that trauma is stored in the body, this is what we mean. We mean that your five senses, the sense of taste, the sense of of touch, smell, see, all of those senses participate in trauma 1 or trauma 2. They all participate. And in order for you to feel those things, you have to be a part of your emotional brain, which I will talk about in 2 weeks. When your body, trauma is stored in the body, literally means 2 things. It means that all your senses have been captured by the trauma. So you can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it, you can hear it, you can taste it, you can, all of those things. It's part of the trauma. It also means another thing. It means that your unconscious mind, your body has become the unconscious mind. And I'm going to explain that to you. You have the 3 parts of your mind. You have your conscious mind, you have your subconscious mind, and you have your unconscious mind. Your conscious mind is 5% of your brain, or 5% of your mind, in quotes. That is the mind that you use every day. You're listening to me in class right now, you're participating, you're writing, you're thinking. That is your conscious mind. 5%. 5%. 15% of your mind is your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind, so let's go back to your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is your active mind. It's the one you're using right now in class. Very active, participates, knows something, is your working memory, it's part of your short-term memory. It's right here, right now, active. That's your conscious mind. Your subconscious mind is the mind where you know the things are there, but you don't need them right now. So they are kept temporarily for you or permanently for you, however you want to keep it. Your subconscious mind is the mind where maybe you learned how to ride a bike when you were 5 years old, but you didn't get to ride it back for another 5 years, and you pick it up again and you can ride it. You can pull it from your subconscious mind. You know it's there. I learned this skill. I know it's there. I pull it from my subconscious mind. It does into my active mind. Is this making sense? So your subconscious can become your conscious mind when it is needed. Then that means 80% of your mind is unconscious, which means you don't know what it's there. You don't know how it is layered. You have no idea what is in that mind. So let me ask you a question. Which one impacts your life the most? Do the math. Is it the subconscious, the conscious, or the unconscious?
The unconscious.
Why?
Because
Come on. You know the answer because you just said the unconscious, and you don't have to explain anything big. But there's a reason why you said the unconscious. Why?
Because the greater percentage of what's called the mind is there.
Absolutely. The unconscious mind is your most powerful mind, and you don't even know what it's there. So when we say the trauma is stored in the body, it means that your body becomes your unconscious mind. Your body, that means your senses. And when we're talking about, when we say your body, we're talking about your 5 senses, becomes part of that unconscious mind. That means it has stuff going on there that you don't have access to because you don't know it's there. And it becomes the driver of your life. So a lot of the time you say you're going to London, but you find yourself in Sri Lanka. You said you're going to Egypt, you find yourself in where? Just give me a country. Find yourself someplace else, right? Because the unconscious mind is the most powerful mind, and it is what regulates our actions and our bodies, and our reactions. So you would have somebody say to me, I'm confessing that, I'm going to do this. I'm confessing that I'm going to do this. I'm confessing I'm going to do this. Confession without a change in the internal workings of the mind is an act of frustration. Because that internal mind needs to be changed first. That is one of the reasons in scriptures it talks about renewing your mind. See, we have to understand what I said. Talking about renewing your mind. The mind that needs to be renewed and re-engineered is that 80%. You have to find a way to go in there, dig it out, bring up all the stuff that's in there so that you can go into your subconscious mind or your conscious mind. So part of the elements of trauma is that your mind is captured. And your senses are constantly going to be reacting to something. Have you ever seen somebody overreact? Maybe they came home late and you said, and they were like, oh my God, you started yelling. Or your child does something and you're yelling. Or somebody does something and you react. Overreact. It's because you're not reacting to what you're seeing in your present. Your unconscious mind is reacting to what is there. Yeah? Is the class with me? Yes, no, come on, I need to hear voices or thumbs up or thumbs down. Yes. Are we good? Okay. Yes. All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. It helps guide my conversation. All right. Oh no, let's go back to that other screen. If you find yourself avoiding the reminders of the trauma, you're in a trauma zone. If you find yourself having troubles to sleep and all of those exaggerated responses I talked about, you're in trauma zones. If you were not in class last week, get the recording for last week because we talked about vicarious trauma. You need to get it. All right. This is where you are going to do some work. All right. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. I'm going to give you a type of trauma and you are going to research it briefly and then tell us what it is. All right. If you have read, for those of you who have been with us from the beginning, you should have read about some of this. But if you haven't, you're going to do a little bit of research in your group and then come back It's just going to take you about, I'm going to give you about, I'm going to give you about 20 minutes for this, maybe 15 minutes. Do a little bit of research, talk about it, and then come back and tell us about it. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, so these are the traumas that I'm going to talk about, that I'm going to give out to you. So we're going to talk about we're going to talk about mass trauma. What is that? What is a mass trauma? We'll talk about maybe domestic violence. We'll talk about, anyway, you'll see it when you get in your group, what group you belong to. So let me put you in breakout rooms. Just briefly talk about it. Talk about it. You don't have to do any big research. Just talk about it based on your own context, from where you're living. What does that look like? And then we'll come back in class. All right. So breakout rooms are. Let's look at breakout rooms. How about we put 4 people in a room? Oh, and there are. This is going to be interesting because anyway, let me just do it the way I can do it. Let's have 18. So let's have 4 people in a room. 4 breakout rooms. 4 breakout rooms. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to put what you're going to do in the name of your breakout room is going to have the name of your topic. Okay. Okay. So room 1 is going to have domestic violence or intimate partner domestic abuse or intimate partner violence. Okay, that's group number 1. All right. Group number 2, you're going to have mass trauma. What is mass trauma? And what does that look like in terms of, the communities that it impacts? Group number 3, we're going to talk about rape and child and sexual violence. Rape or sexual assault. All right. And then we're going to have cultural traumas. What does that look like? Cultural traumas. Cultural religious traumas and religious traumas. All right. All right. So group 1, if you're in group 1, you're going to do domestic abuse and intimate partner violence. If you're in group 2, you're going to talk about mass trauma. And what does mass trauma look like? Mass trauma could be anything from a natural disaster to terrorism. It could be, a whole bunch of things. Group 3, you're going to talk about rape and sexual assault of any kind. And group 4, you're going to talk about cultural and religious traumas. So I'm going to open the rooms right now, accept it, and get in your rooms, please. You have 15 minutes. So the rooms are open. You have to find it and click accept so you can join. Olaide, you have your hand up. Olaide, you have your hand up. What is it, please? Maybe I think she has network issues. So accept your room and get in your rooms, please. I still see some of you here. What is the problem? Ejiro, Rigat, Burham. You're not in your room. Stella Mowat, you're not in your rooms. What's the problem? Burhan, what's going on? Rigat, what is going on?
Yes.
You having problem accessing the breakout rooms?
Yeah, it's not internet access.
Oh, I don't know. What is there anything I can do? All right. So for example, Busayo, okay, they're waiting for you in your room. Okay, looks like that group has gone. Okay, I have the same group. Roman, you're not in your group yet. Roman? You guys are having network issues and I don't know how to help you with that. Roman, I'm going to assign you to rape. Go ahead, join the rape group. Roman, you have to click on the thing to join the group. Okay, she's gone. Regat, what is the problem? You guys have to join your group. Just click on the thing to join the group. Okay. Regat, you guys can log out and log back in. Maybe that will help you if you log out and log back in. You want to log out and log back in. Okay.